Get the coffee going, get the tea going, get a beverage of your choice going, settle in, relax. Have we got a show for you tonight? And what a perfect night weather-wise for this particular show. We're going to be looking at the paranormal, in particular around the Niagara region. And we're going to be looking at the certain cases of possession, certain cases of hauntings, all of the above. Now, what's really cool about tonight is I'm looking outside the studio window right now, and the clouds are like 3 feet off the ground. There's fog out there. They're heavy, thick clouds. Almost looks like a tornado could come. They're kind of green in colorish. All day long it's been pouring rain here in Kingston, Ontario. And it's a great night to settle in, kick your feet back up on the couch, and relax. Our guest tonight is none other than a fella who started his own paranormal show in Niagara Falls. It's called Niagara's Most Haunted. It's a TV show, and his name is Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco. He's a psychologist. Ready for this, folks? He's creator and instructor of the Criminal Psychology Department program at Niagara College. He's also an instructor at McMaster University in Hamilton. McMaster University, folks, for those of you south of the border, is one of our Ivy League universities here in Canada. There are several Ivy League class universities, and that is definitely one. He is also author of a book called Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Mysterious and Macabre. I'd like to welcome Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco to the show for the very first time, and certainly not the last. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Well, hello there, Brent, and everybody listening out your way. I hope you're having an awesome night, and thank you so much for having me on your show. This is really special for me.
You're very welcome, my friend. Okay, Peter, let's jump in right away. I want to go somewhere right away. February 6, 1970, a little 11-year-old boy, Peter was his name, seemed to have become possessed in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is a stone's throw from where you are in Niagara. Can you tell that story, and then we'll jump off from there?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it's kind of an interesting and intriguing story. Actually, I wrote about it in my new book, Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Macabre. And one of the things that is interesting is you mentioned that my background is criminal psych. So I've done a lot of work over the years with police, and I teach that. Mm-hmm. And I am a man of science, Brent. Just so everybody out there knows, I am not a ghostbuster, ghost chaser, any of that kind of stuff.
You know, Dan Aykroyd lives right up the street. You know that from where I am.
Does he?
Yeah.
Maybe you can help him get that Ghostbusters 3 going.
Oh, he's working. Apparently, Bill Murray is the problem. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
that's what I've heard. And now that Harold Ramis, we lost him. That sucks.
Yeah, God love him. Yeah.
So with that said, a guy who was one of the police officers, the first attending officers on the case back in the day, I did some stuff with him about 12 years ago with a friend of mine who hosts actually one of Canada's biggest show on militia and Canada's veterans. That's actually the name of the show, The Veterans, and it's an award-winning show. And we were doing something fun at the time that had to do with this haunted stuff, just kind of like a documentary on some of the haunted places down here. So Mike Mooney was a police officer in that case, and this is the first I really heard in depth about it. And he's telling me all about it, about plates flying off the wall, a chair pinning a kid down, and at that point there he says, Pete, we got out of Dodge because, you know, we're cops. We don't deal with this kind of stuff. So a couple of years later, or a couple of years ago, a guy by the name of Bob, nicknamed Scotty Crawford, he's Scotty because he's from Scotland, and he was his first year on the job, I believe, in 1970. He was one of the other attending officers there. And so Bob gave me, you know what, Brent, an in-depth interview on it. He had talked about it before, but not to the degree that he spoke with me for our TV show, Niagara's Most Haunted, and also it's now in the film festival this year in Toronto, Niagara's Most Haunted, and to start this book, Paranormal Niagara, which was the sequel to Niagara's Most Haunted, the book, which spun the TV show. So with that said, Bob is getting into all this stuff, and I'm a man of science. I am also a skeptic. I need to see stuff to believe it. And he goes, oh, my friend, here's some police reports, and he gives them to me, and there's 8 of them. And I'm going through them, and I'm just blown away because it all matches up to what he said, including a Crown attorney, a Canadian Crown Attorney walking in there and seeing 3 adults sitting on a Chesterfield that is elevated about 16 inches off the ground, and one of the women on the Chesterfield's jumping off there like it's an amusement park ride that she's had enough of, screaming, and he goes out the door, never to come back. And everything, just was as he had said it was, from what I read in the reports and me speaking to not only that other police officer, but, poking around, asking other cops. And as a rule of thumb, I know cops are very modest about what they'll talk about and definitely guarded when it comes to really weird stuff. They don't want to put their names to it. And when you have cops putting their name on a report like this, there's definitely something to it.
Wow. Now, you're a man of science. Any speculation in your research how something like that could take place in somebody's home?
Well, when I was doing my PhD, I did do a course in parapsychology because I've always been interested in it. When I'm talking about parapsychology, I'm talking about psychokinesis, the ability to move things with the mind, telepathy, the ability to see things into the future, or retrocognition, the ability to see things in the past, or, as I said, postcognition, to see things in the future. So if you're either telepathic or psychokinetic, you have mind powers, and that's kind of where I was really interested in that. And, I'm reading stuff on Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus, and then, some of the more famous psychics that have, you've seen them affix to different police investigations in the United States and had made various predictions, like assassinations of John F. Kennedy and stuff like that. So I was always fascinated, is it coincidence? And then when you read through this, you're just going, oh, gosh. This is like you're looking at a prediction that's made. That's so much of it is right on. So I got into looking at kind of like I branched out and started. I was interested in the spiritual stuff, like people seeing ghosts and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, is it mass hysteria? Is it mind over matter, where they're visualizing it? And to make a long story short, as I was looking at this case here, the movie The Conjuring was going to come out last year, so this was the year before. That was Ed Warren. He was known as the demonologist that had worked many famous cases in the States, including the Amityville horror case, some of the cases that involved West Point. It's documented, and some other big investigations. And I looked at what he had to say, Brent. And one of the things I really found interesting, going back to my parapsychology days, is in a lab, when you're using telekinesis to move things, the most that they've ever proven that they can do, I believe, was 3 pounds. You could lift up to 3 pounds, whereas in this house in St. Catharines, this apartment house, there's things being moved like couches and that. So I'd say that's way over 3 pounds. And to quote Ed Warren, or to kind of look at what he had said in his book, he said, if it's anything's over 3 pounds, it's more of a spirit, a demonic spirit usually, or some bad spirit that's doing this, because the mind of a boy that was, i.e. the poltergeist, probably isn't doing that.
What is your definition of a demon?
That's a really interesting thing. I would look at this, and it depends on how you look on it based on
Fair enough.
Scientifically, you could say that it's potentially a force, an evil force or spirit created by the mind, which would then fall back into the poltergeist case, which, i.e., if you're looking at it that way there, it's a disgruntled child usually, or a teenager that is doing this because they're experiencing some sort of neglect or abuse or sexual abuse, and this is their way of venting it or projecting it outwards. So that's how it's manifesting. If you're looking at it from a spiritual sense, and you know what, myself, I was raised Catholic, I am a Christian, so for me, I do believe in the concept of evil, that there are spiritual entities, and the bottom line is, let's just put it this way, until anybody proves me otherwise, tell me how the world got here. Go beyond the Big Bang Theory and the instantaneous, we all came into existence. Okay, I'll buy that, but tell me, who is the primary mover that started that? Who put the intelligence into the system? And we know cause-effect. X causes Y. There always has to be something that causes something, even if it's an accident. There has to be something behind the scenes, the wizard on the stilts, whatever. So with that said, I would buy into the fact that if something created the universe, and based on your faith, whatever it is, and a lot of faiths, including Christianity and others, believe in the concept of evil, that there's this evil power at work, and perhaps it's that it is what it is advertised, that there are spirits amongst us. I've always contended, for the longest time, people didn't know what gravity was, didn't understand it, but you knew not to jump off a cliff, you die. But just because you can't see it, it's there. We all know electricity is there. We can't see it, but we know better to go put our fingers in light sockets. So sometimes what we can't see, it could be demonic spirits or good spirits that are there. Just because we can't see them doesn't mean it's there.
Folks, the case we're talking about tonight was so alarming that it caught the attention of Johnny Carson. This case went all the way back to February of 1970, where this young little boy, 11 years old, his name's Peter, apparently it's not his real name, became possessed or overtaken by a poltergeist. And I'm going to ask our guest, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, in a second, what the difference between a demonic possession is and a poltergeist possession. But I just want to tell you, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book cover, which is Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Mysterious and the Macabre. And that'll take you right to a place online where you can order the book from the comfort of your own home. Now, he also has a TV show in the same, coincidentally, on the same network that I do, TV Kojiko, called Niagara's Most Haunted. And fans of this show should tune in and see that show as well. Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco is our guest, as I said. Now, Johnny Carson mentioned it on his show all the way back in 1970. That's how alarming it was. I want to go back to you and this whole Big Bang theory and that there was something before it. Do you think God created the devil to keep us in balance? Because without a positive, I'll give you a good example of what I'm referring to. I'm a lighting designer. I have a lighting design degree from Concordia University, worked on Bon Jovi and all those guys.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, thank you. It wasn't that cool, actually. It was behind the scenes. But thank you. It was a lot of fun. On a dark stage, if somebody was on a fully lit stage, I should say, if somebody was to walk out on a fully lit stage with a candle, you probably wouldn't pick up the candle because it's so full of light. However, on a darkened stage, you create that same scenario. The brightest thing in that, on the stage and also in the building, is going to be that candle. Do you think that's why, perhaps, in your opinion, God may have created the devil?
It's an interesting question, Brent.
Speculation's fine. We're just having a talk, folks. It's fun. We're having some fun, that's all.
Yeah, and once again, I believe it ties into the faith, what you believed, what you were taught, or kind of, what makes sense to you. And with that said, okay, based on, being raised Catholic, being raised a Christian, and really, if you look at it, what you find in the Bible has the most consistent sort of explanation as how the world got here, and the whole, if you're looking into demonology, and not just demonology, but angels, because if you ask most people, they'll say, hey, I believe in angels, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's kind of an interesting phenomenon. They'll say, yeah, I believe in angels, but I don't believe in demons or the devil. So I'm thinking, well, really, because if you look at it, you can even look at it from a humanistic perspective, that not all humans are good. There's a lot of, from the truest sense, there's humans that do bad. And there are humans that turn bad, i.e. serial killers, and we've had some famous ones in Canada.
Yeah, they used to live just down the street from me as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Actually, ironically, he was down the street from me. That's where he did the killings in St. Catharines here.
Lord.
And I did see a lot on that case back in the day when I had some involvement with the police.
We're talking about serial killer Paul Bernardo, folks, and you can find a whole show on Canada's most famous serial killers in the archives, www.nightfrightshow.com. Yeah, pretty creepy guys. And when I referenced the fact that they lived just down the street from me, it was the home for the longest of times of Canada's most perverted and most disgusting human beings, the serial killers at Kingston's maximum security penitentiary. They've since closed it down. But those guys are still around. We don't have the death penalty here in Canada, and they've just been moved to more secure facilities.
I guess to answer your question, even like in terms of going that, so just as you have humans that can turn bad, I guess if you take it from a biblical sense, because the Bible is going to be your best starting point if you're going to start to look into other dimensions than the third dimensions which we exist in, which is we can see stuff. then if you're buying into the concept of heaven, then you've got to buy into the concept of hell because it's stated biblically. And to go further, if you're a believer and if your God is saying that there is a devil, then you have to buy into the fact that God can't lie to you. Then there must be a devil. And if there is a devil, where did that devil start out? Well, he started out as one of the archangels, Lucifer, Gabriel, and Michael. He fell from the sky or from the heavens there, and then he became Satan, and he took 1/3 of the angels with him. That became the demons. So, that's the best kind of story that we've got that, we can hang our hats on. And then you have other different religions and religious beliefs, but they all basically subscribe to the same notion, kind of like a fallen spirit.
Folks, let me just read this. This is from the Washington Post, and this is an article from May 5th of this year, 2014. And it goes like this: 200 delegates from around the world attended a Vatican-sponsored exorcism conference. And that was held in Rome, folks. When challenged to his belief that Satan is responsible for today's global catastrophes, Pope Francis, you know what he said, folks? He just simply replied, "Beware, the devil is real." And he blames the devil, Satan, if you will, for a lot of the catastrophes that are going on in the world today. And you know what? I have never seen the world crazier. Have you ever seen the world? I was talking with my mom, and God love her, she went through the Depression, and she said, "I've never seen the world in such chaos. The devil must be having a heck of a time partying." Do you feel somewhat the same way?
You know what, Brent? It's an interesting question again. I'm kind of guarded in terms of I believe too many people give the devil too much credit as a cop-out, blaming what they do.
Fair enough. I can see that.
And it's almost like a worshiping of them. Well, if somebody did this, it must be the devil. It must be the devil. And then sometimes, if you believe in the devil, say there's a devil, he must be sitting there going, "Oh, great, this is great. Give me more credit. I didn't even do this, but hey, I'll take it." And then you got the flip side of it where things are happening, the smallest things or the things that don't make sense, the stuff that people may never say the devil had anything to do with it if you buy into it. And that's probably where the devil, the actions of the devil would be more likely because they're more discreet. They're not as advertised and pronounced. Therefore, he's literally the sheep in wolf's clothing getting away with murder.
You had mentioned Ed Warren before, and Ed and Lorraine Warren folks were probably the two most famous demonologists that come to mind whenever you think of demonology. And he had approached a young woman that was on this show, Christine Corda, who went through a real Roman Catholic exorcism. And he had told her that she needed one. Now, I'm going to put this to you. Have you ever come across something in your practice, because you're a psychologist, that you can't explain? And would you ever consider recommending an exorcism to any of your clients?
You know what, Brent? First of all, I haven't been in practice for almost about 10 years now.
Okay.
And with that said, I have never really seen anything to that degree.
Thank God.
Now,
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. But, okay, and then here is once again the disclaimer. It depends on what you want to attribute one's actions to, or the precipitator of the actions. So does the guy that continually drugs, drinks, beats his wife up, beats his kids up, or molests his kids, you look at that situation and you go, okay, is that a normal person? And my response is absolutely not. All sexual abuse is wrong. All abuse of kids is wrong. And definitely, the whole notion of pedophilia and molestation is absolutely an aberration to society. So you look at that there, and I've dealt with pedophiles in the past. I've dealt with rapists. I've dealt with definitely many wife abusers. And I'll go to the other side. I've dealt with a lot of abused men who have been beaten up, or not only physically beaten, but psychologically abused by their female spouses. And also the same thing with homosexual relations, where there's been the abuse in them. So it's not necessarily a purely gender thing, but then it falls into, wow, to answer your question, I'm sitting there listening, wow, how can people be so evil to one another?
Precisely.
when have you been taught this? Like, some of these things that I had witnessed, Brent, were very diabolical in what a parent can do to their child to get back at their ex because they didn't get custody of the kid, or they're upset about, alimony payments, different types of other situation going on.
Can you give the audience just a small, without revealing anybody's name, complete anonymity, can you give an example?
Oh, absolutely. And I've spoken on these. Like, to actually see a situation where a wife had left, split up with the husband, didn't want any part of him anymore. I don't know the entire nature of the relationship while it went down, because I'm always a firm believer. There's three sides to every story. Her side, his side, and the third party, the truth, like in between, whatever that is. And, and I had heard the situation. I was running a support group back in the day, and this mother that was in my group, a single mom, was absolutely just vexed and beside herself and upset in terms of what was continually happening. And so, to make a long story short, he didn't get custody of the children, obviously, was only able to see them on the weekends. He could only have them Friday at, say, 6 o'clock, and he'd have to have them back to her place by 6 o'clock Sunday night. And so she had already started dating. He would try to wreck those relationships by getting the kids turned on the guys she would be dating. But to go one step further, he came up with this extremely diabolical plan where he would take the kids Sunday afternoon, start taking them out for chocolate sundaes and all that stuff, and before he would drop them off back at her place, he'd take them to Starbucks and get them loaded up with basically a double shot espresso coffee and a chocolate bar to go to chase it down with. So he'd bring these kids back at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night. Good luck getting them in bed.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be impossible.
Yeah, and they're wired. And I'm sitting there listening to this. Yeah, and he's punishing her, but he's also using these kids, and that's just horrible. And, you look at a situation like that, and I'm just thinking, man, that is just bad. And, these are the types of situations I see, and you think, okay, this guy's supposed to be a loving father. If, your relationship's not working, it hasn't ended, and you're having issues getting over that, but why are you hurting your kids so bad?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And, it makes me wonder if this is just part of the human condition or if there's something else out there that's influencing it. And that's when we get back to what I think is the definition of evil, and where does it come from? I mean, when you look at a Paul Bernardo, a Russell Williams, and all the rest of the great Canadian Hall of Fame, the word you used was apropos, diabolical. And Diable is the root of that name. Folks, we're speaking with a very great guy tonight. And he's Canadian. I love the way he speaks. He speaks like I do, and I don't have to do any translations for once. Thank God. He says about the proper way, folks, south of the border. Paranormal Niagara is his book, Cases of the Mysterious and the Macabre. Niagara's Most Haunted is his TV show on TV Cogeco. I'm going to give TV Cogeco a plug all the way along here. His name is Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco. He's a psychologist. He's the creator and instructor of the Criminal Psychology Department at Niagara College. He's also an instructor at McMaster University in Hamilton. I just have to do a quick plug here. It's time for this. Folks, as you know, I do a lot of shows on JFK, and that has led me to releasing a book on JFK. And the book is called JFK Assassination, From the Oval Office to DEALEY Plaza. It's interviews with witnesses and specialists, including, and this is the hook for the book, my publisher always tells me to push this part, Brent, the last interview with Ted Sorensen, JFK's friend and speechwriter. I had the glorious opportunity to spend an afternoon with Ted Sorensen in his Manhattan apartment. For those of you that aren't aware who Ted Sorensen is, he was JFK's speechwriter and closest aide. He was the guy that wrote the letter to Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis that virtually saved mankind. Anyways, the book is full of original quotes, and he confirms conspiracy, not a coup d'etat, but a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. And all the details are in my new book called JFK Assassination. I'm lousy at this, Peter. I really have a hard time promoting myself. I just feel like Anyways, I have to do it. From the Oval Office to DEALEY Plaza. And you can get that once again at www.nightfrightshow.com. You click on the book cover there. Or Amazon has it, all the Amazons, ukca.com. Chapters Indigo is also selling the book as well, folks, online. And I hope to be setting up a Chapters Indigo book tour and getting down to Niagara Falls at one point, too, this fall.
Well, very much. Kudos to you, Brent.
Well, thank you very much. Let's go back to Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco. We're talking about a case today that took place in Canada, not too far from Niagara Falls, a place called St. Catharines, which is also the noted place for Bernardo and Homolka, the Barbie murderers, the Ken and Barbie murderers, that you may recognize them more in the United States by that name. But it also has a very creepy past because in 1970, a young 11-year-old boy by the name of Peter, not his real name, became possessed, if you will, by a poltergeist. Now, I want to ask Peter, what's the difference between a poltergeist possession and a demonic possession? You see, you're going to educate me tonight because I've been doing this show for, 5 or 6 years, and I didn't know that there was a difference between the two.
Yeah, and I guess the qualifier with this is, the disclaimer is, first of all, you have to buy or believe in the concept of either one of these terms or both of the terms. That means you do believe in the concept of a demon per se, and then you also buy and believe in the concept of a poltergeist, which poltergeist translated is noisy spirit. So the general, I guess, translation or definition, if you're looking at the two of them, or how they contrast with one another, is poltergeist is basically noisy spirit created by an individual, meaning they're causing it. They're causing it by mental or psychokinetic energy that's projected outwards, and most times they don't even know that they're doing it. I think Stephen King did the best version of this in the book Carrie, and then the movie Carrie, obviously. In the book, or in the movie, I remember Sissy Spacek was Carrie, the original one that is.
Yeah, me too. I go back that far too.
Yeah, and she's able to change,
manipulate.
Things around her. So basically, what it is that you're seeing. How should we put this? You have a natural phenomenon, which is a human being, which once again, the mind and mental energy exists. We know for sure. We're all energetic people. Because sometimes people go, well, I don't believe in that energy stuff. I don't believe that we have this energy. Really? Well, the bottom line is that if you don't believe it, rub your hands together as hard as you can, and then hold one up to your face or both up to your face, and you'll feel heat. That's energy that you've created for yourself and you put off.
Excellent analogy. Nice.
Yeah, and if you go, if your skin is dry and you go touch a TV set, have you ever got one of those zaps where you're ready to go? Yeah, that's energy. So we're all energy. So basically what this is just, it's a form of energy, the mental energy that creates the spirit. So it's a natural phenomenon creating movement in the natural world, whereas poltergeist activity, or the demonic one that you're talking about, the possession, is a supernatural phenomenon, meaning that you have some sort of demonic entity which is not in a human body because it's a non-corporeal being. It's never been in human form in this world. And what it does is it has the ability to manipulate the environment, which is natural. The environment's natural, but it's a supernatural being, and it's able to move natural things before our eyes. And that's the best or definition examples I can, basically give you on just what the literature is out there. Sure. Not that I've seen the demonic stuff myself, because I don't go looking for that stuff.
If you were to come across a situation like I've just described with this young 11-year-old boy, Peter, how would you handle it?
That would be a really kind of cool situation to see, and I say this.
That's an interesting thing to see. See, what I would have done, I'll be honest with you, Peter, if somebody had said, come see this kid, and he was doing what he was doing, I probably would have moved from St. Catharines by now, especially now that I know about Bernardo and Homolka. I'm just teasing, but how would you handle it?
The very first thing, it's interesting. And once again, being a person of science, being a person who's skeptic, and I need to see things to believe things, I would definitely say, hey, let's set up some cameras. Because we have the technology today to put a whole whack of cameras up, and we could hide a lot of these cameras. We can put them in these kind of baby, baby bear things and all this stuff, the dolls, the babysitter things that they've had in the past, the watchdog guard things. And I would want to tape this to see if I'm seeing any phenomenon myself, try to measure this sort of stuff if it really was happening. And it would be fascinating to see, because like I said, there's so much we don't know, especially with the human brain. The brain is like the universe. There's so much of the universe out there that we have no idea what exists within the constellations, in outer space. We're always finding new stuff out there, and that's what the brain is too. So we have all this stuff within us going on. So this is yet another way to see how the mind actually works, to see basically if there really was this high level of intelligence that some historians believe existed once, if there was, and Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis.
Yeah.
Were these people so intelligent? Were they psychokinetic? And, it would be a really cool place to start at.
Would you put electrodes on their head to try and measure?
No, I wouldn't do the electrode thing.
Okay. I was trying to make a smooth segue here, Peter. As a fellow broadcaster, I was trying to make a smooth segue into Michael Persinger's work up at Laurentian University. Are you aware of his work, Dr. Michael
No.
Persinger? Oh, okay. Let me do this then. Folks, a whole bunch of years ago, I fell in love at McGill University with a mining engineer. And we moved to Sudbury, Ontario from Montreal. And it was a bit of a cultural shock for me. She was cool because she would go to work every day and she loved it. But for an artsy-fartsy like me, as fans of the show know, I had my own music business and composed for NASA and all these guys. So it was a bit of a cultural shock, and I was a fan of a show called Coast to Coast, which I bet every listener that's listening right now knows the show. George Norris show now, and George is a friend, and Art Bell, So when I got to Sudbury, I was bored. I was going a little bit snaky, and the local university has a campus radio station, Laurentian University, CKLU, and they asked for volunteer hosts. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own paranormal conspiracy show, not knowing what the hell I'm doing. And that's pretty obvious, folks? I guess things don't get better over time. So when I was there, I was introduced to this fellow by the name of Dr. Michael Persinger, who works there. He's got a PhD, and what he's trying to do is recreate in a laboratory experiment and in a laboratory paranormal experiences. He's trying to see if he can recreate somebody seeing a UFO, a lost relative, a demon possession. And the way he does this is by minute manipulations of the brain through magnetic pulses. And he uses something called the God helmet, which I've actually had on my head, but it was not in use at the time. And it's a snowmobile helmet, folks, with little electrodes in it. And it's just little small, barely measurable samples of electromagnetic fields to manipulate various parts of the brain. Now, over the years, he's had mixed results. With some people, he's able to actually scare them so much they just go running. With other people, nothing at all happens. So this is the work of Dr. Michael Persinger up at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario. So I'm just introducing you to this guy, and I was going to segue into that. Does that sound like, with your medical background, does that sound like something that could actually benefit mankind by doing experiments like this, Peter?
It's interesting. I'm still kind of marinating on and digesting it. It's a really interesting type of study, I would say. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're going to actually get out of it, though.
Yeah, like I said, he's had mixed results, and I'm wondering if there has to be a susceptibility to it somewhere along the line, or a certain brain chemistry. And I guess, we're both coming at this not as skeptics so much, but as scientists, not myself so much as you, but looking for some kind of explanation why some people will see a UFO, or, little children see ghosts all the time, and why we as adults don't. So I think it's good to experiment. I mean, there's so many mysteries in life. Why not find out what's going on with our brains? I think it's pretty notable, actually.
Well, it's interesting, and I when I look at this, Brent, first of all, I think, okay, what would it really prove? Why are we so much out to disprove what people think they see. You know, where
Good
does
point.
it,
Good point.
where does it, you know, is it the person that needs to disprove another person's belief system because this is going to make them feel superior? And I've always wondered it. If somebody sees something or believes in something and it works for them in their life, i.e., I've gotten to know Jack Canfield, the Jack Canfield who created Chicken Soup for the Soul. Jack is one of my mentors. I've spoken to Jack on occasion, and Jack is a big proponent in the law of attraction. You know, some people say, well, I don't buy in that law of attraction stuff. I don't believe it works. Well, it's working for Jack Canfield, and it's working for Mark Victor Hansen, because they're two of the richest men on the face of this earth. And they came from a place that, you know, of not having much. And I know others that were in the movie The Secret that I've spoken to, and they'll all say, hey, it's working for me. And so, and here's something that's really, really, really interesting, that so many sound minds and adults and all that kind of stuff want to kind of disprove all of this hokiness, or these people that have beliefs in UFOs or ghosts and all that stuff, but yet nobody bats an eyelash over the fact that so many parents, teachers deceive kids into believing there's a Santa Claus.
You mean there's not?
I've always wondered that, Brent. Really think about this. They want kids to believe that there's this Santa Claus up, you know, at least they're 6, 7, 8 years of age. And it's really adamant. So many parents are adamant about it. Even schools want this. It's a very commercial thing. But yet, you know, if a kid says, yeah, Mommy, I saw Santa Claus, or I want to believe in Santa Claus, the parents will love this. A lot of parents, that is. But yet, if they say, I want to believe in the ghosts, or I want to believe in this sort of stuff, or a UFO, it's like, no, we better not have you thinking that way.
Interesting point. That's terrific, you know. And in my own case, I can remember dressing up as Santa Claus for my nephews when they were young. And in one case, the poor little guy, who was 2 years old, just threw himself on the ground in hysterics. I'd scared the bejesus out of him.
You know what? It's really funny, if I can just elaborate on this, because I did an interview, last year or 2 years ago before Christmas, and I find it, and, you know, myself, I just love to go on these tangents and be funny, sarcastic, but because I was a former coordinator down in the Niagara region for Child Find, it's kind of funny. Parents teach their kids about stranger danger. Don't ever let anybody in the house, but, it's okay for this guy with a red suit and a beard to come down your chimney. And then also a lot of parents flip out if there's rodents outside. They scream, they whip things that rabbits eating in their gardens. But, it's okay, the Easter Bunny's going to come in the house there, you know. And the parents won't let their own bunny, if they got a pet bunny, out of the cage, because it might, you know, leave a mess somewhere and do something, leave its own little Easter nuggets around the house. But yet, the Easter Bunny's coming, better go to bed.
Interesting. Do you think we're sending mixed messages then, aren't we?
It is. It really is when you look at it. You know what? Believing in Santa Claus is totally harmless, and I think it's a great thing. Give kids hope. Give them a sense of hope. Let them believe in the tooth fairy. You know, you go back to my generation and beforehand, it was great to believe in things. We wanted to believe in things and enjoy things because there was a sense of innocence. There was a sense of awesome creativity. And, you know, there was great artists, great musicians, great actors and actresses that came out of that belief system. And now today everything is just done for us kind of on a computer.
Have we lost that? Have we lost that creative ability? I'll give you a good example. When I was a kid, we were so poor we lived in a cardboard box at the bottom of a... No, I'm kidding. That's Monty Python, folks. But if I wanted to make a spaceship, I would take the grocery cartons and make a spaceship out of those. Today, you can go to Toys R Us or any one of numerous toy stores and buy a fully made plastic spaceship with all the decals and everything right on it. You don't have to create from your own head. Do you think that's part of the problem? Why music's so lousy? Oh, did I just say that?
Well, yeah, I think absolutely. I think we've removed the ability for kids to create, to conceive things in their own minds, and I think it's already, you know, it's showing up in text messaging and emails. The amount of grammatical errors, the lack of ability to spell correctly, just bad sentence structure, everything, emoticons that are being used instead of actual expressions, like a person expressing themselves, and other people that are, you know, needing to deal with it, like, interpret it. And I've written a whole book. By the way, it's actually free. If you want to read this book, it's called Technological Rage. It's on my website at petersacco.com. And I did it in response to a large number of kids that were being bullied online. And I sat on a panel one afternoon with some police officers at a radio station, and we were taking calls and talking about online bullying. And, there was several teenagers that had committed suicide because of it. And what I wanted to get out there was that, hey, let's learn some courtesy in texting, sending emails, and not harassing people in these forums, because this is the next thing, Brent. And once again, fellow professors have said the same thing, and I know friends of mine who are teachers are saying, Peter, the spelling is atrocious. And a lot of this is because everybody's, too many of this generation are just texting little bits here and there, and a lot of people, Brent, are not reading anymore.
Yeah, and that's alarming as well. And they're not thinking for themselves either, or problem solving. And that really, ideas are what moves society forward. And I don't see a lot of fresh new ideas. I see a lot of things on television like Duck Dynasty and the Swamp People and all this reality stuff there's no creativity behind it. And that disturbs me no end. Whenever I go to a movie, at the end of the movie, if there's 5 people that have come together, 5 university students going here to Queen's University or something, as soon as the movie's over, nobody's talking to each other. They've all lit up their cell phones, and they're texting. Oh, yeah. There's no communication going on between them all. So we're getting a little bit off subject, but it's all part and parcel to what we're talking about tonight, folks, which is Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco's book called Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Mysterious and the Macabre. And he's also got a terrific TV show on TV Kojiko in the Niagara Falls area, Niagara's Most Haunted. You want to tune in for that one as well. And he's got free products at his website, and you'll be able to get all these links I've just mentioned, folks, at the www.nightfrightshow.com website. And I want to thank Kelly Logue. Kelly, thank you, buddy, from the bottom of my heart every week. He puts everything together on the website free. He's a volunteer, as I am. Nobody makes a dime off this show, and he puts it all up there for you very, very succinctly and very organized, because there's no way I could maintain what I do all day long and put these shows together as well and try and maintain a website. So thank you, Kelly. Kelly's up in Juneau, Alaska, by the way, folks. And one day we'll meet, my friend, and the beer's on me. It'll be a Canadian beer, but that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about your show and your book. What in the name of God were you thinking? That's what I ask myself every time I do a show, by the way, Peter. What led you to want to do, first of all, a book, and then I suspect the spin-off from the book was the television show. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so let's dive into that.
Ironically, they were like going synergetically at the same time, if you want to use a term there, Brent. It was the idea came from, I was actually working on an idea with the show with a good friend of mine, Frank Bertola, about 3 years ago. Frank went to USC Film School. He's in all that kind of stuff, like really cool in film. And we were hashing around the idea, and we thought, hey, why not? And I was actually starting, as I was kind of scripting the ideas for the TV show. Mm-hmm. I was writing the book. It wasn't a book yet. It was the ideas for the TV show that I thought, hey, because I had some people going, hey, you have a book for this? I'm doing this, and I'm doing both at the same time. And the bottom line with this, why I was doing this, if anything, is first of all, I love being a Canadian. I don't think there's anything better in the world than being a Canadian. No offense to any other country, because I consider myself an American second, because I'm over there all the time, and I love Americans. But I'm a proud Canadian through and through. With that said, I'm proud of where I live, Niagara Falls. I'm proud of the heritage of this country, and this heritage, part of our heritage was the War of 1812.
That's right.
And the whole fact that, we got to be our own country here and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And Egypt has the pyramids. Let's face it, Egypt is probably, you go down to the Middle East and all that part of the world, that's obviously, the oldest civilizations, and, they're in China. But if you look in North America here, other than Gettysburg, West Virginia, places along the Mississippi. Up where I live in the Niagara region, this is part of the oldest part of all of Canada, because this is where a lot of these settlements were, and the greatest wars were fought here during 1812 around me.
That's
and
right.
so these forts here, Brent, are like our pyramids. All of these tombs and that stuff there are landmarks. I live in a place where a lot of people around the world come to see the falls and the casinos, but I felt that not enough people are really getting the true essence of Niagara Falls or the region here, which are these forts, these tunnels, these old railways, boats, cemeteries, old mansions that are around here from over 200 years ago. And I thought people are missing out the greatest things.
And that region also, I should mention to our American viewers, was a big part of the Underground Railway in the Civil War.
Absolutely.
Just before the Civil War and after and during. And yeah. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted
to... No, absolutely. And in fact, and we're tied so close to the American side there. And so what it was is I wanted not only tourists to find out about these places, but I wanted the kids around here to get out and see these places instead of just thinking the greatest and coolest places around here are the skateboard parks and the cinemas. That there's other places to go out and check in your free time. And, instead of looking up these bloody places on your iPhones, get out there and go in person and see them, for crying out loud.
Live in the moment.
And do it justice. And I started this project with Frank, as I mentioned, and then eventually we started to make it bigger. We went to TV Coach Co. Jack Custers, who's a good friend of mine, is program manager there, and Jack said, "Hey, Peter, why don't you do it with us?" And so with that said, I got together with most of the mayors of each place in the Niagara region, like Barry Sharp in Welland, my good friend Jim Diodati, who's mayor of Niagara Falls, Vance Badaway in Port Colborne, Doug Martin out in Fort Erie. And these places are all, where a lot of these places are. I said, hey, let's put this together and try to get you guys more awareness and tourism within your area. And I talked to MPs, MPPs, and different regional councilors, and everybody was on board, Brent, because everybody thought it's a great idea. And it was commemorating with the bicentennial, the War of 1812, which was really, really big 2 years ago. It was coming up, it was evolving, and we wanted to help and piggyback that and promote it. And that's why I did the show. First of all, it's to share a country and a history that I'm so proud of as a Canadian. Yep, absolutely. Second, it's to promote the people that now own these places that are not just only individual proprietors, but rather these are owned by us, the taxpayers. So let's keep them alive and up and well, and let's keep them, under modifications and preserved, that they're going to stand for the next generations to come to see them. And then third is the ghost stories. Let's talk about the ghost stories. And obviously people love the ghost stories a lot.
Well, it's part of our cultural and heritage too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a big part.
Especially yeah, absolutely. And as a true Canadian, we love campfires, and we love sitting around at nighttime with our s'mores and our marshmallows. And I don't know what you are. I'm a Guinness guy.
Geez, I get a laugh because there's a picture on me with Facebook. I'm a big Guinness guy. I just had one again last night, folks. That was terrible. But the full moon, I was down at Jack Astor's here in the middle of Kingston. There I was on the top of Jack Astor's and on the patio on the roof having a Guinness, watching the big full moon. It was great. So yeah, I'm a big Guinness guy. Right on.
Yeah, and this is our heritage, sitting around talking ghost stories around campfires and that stuff. And that's what makes us great. Our heritage is even kids, because we were the ones who went to Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, Girl Guides, like all the young ones. And this is still alive and well. This is who and what we are.
Yep, I agree completely. And I always say, I get ghost stories from all around the world now. And I always say, if it's going to take sitting around a campfire telling ghost stories to each other to get us from stop shooting each other's butts off, well, then so be it. Our guest tonight, folks, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, www.nightfrightshow.com. Go there. You will find a mess of links to his website to buy his book, Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Mysterious and Macabre, and, of course, a link to Niagara's Most Haunted, the TV show we've just been discussing. Can you give us a little bit of some of the content, without giving too much away, from the book, Paranormal Niagara?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of funny with that, because Niagara's Most Haunted was the first book I wrote. This was actually, if you want to call it, its sister or brother follow because the first one did so well. After the first printing, it was sold out so fast. I couldn't believe it. And I was getting emails from people in Japan and Australia and England going, I really like your show and I like your book. I'm thinking, well, how the heck are you seeing the show? Because it's only available down in Ontario and video on demand. And it's just like, well, no, I saw it when I was visiting in the summer. I was a guest staying at this hotel, and I saw it, and I got hooked on it, and I bought your book, and I read the book cover to cover in one night. And they said, I love the history and all that stuff, and I thought it was going to be a little more, some parts were scary, but I thought it was going to be a little more scary or a little more freaky. So Paranormal Niagara was the follow-up, where I wanted to really get into the cases of really macabre stuff, the stuff like the poltergeist case, the stuff of phantoms. I had a friend of mine, a very credible guy, say, hey, I want you to go for dinner with this woman. And he goes, don't get me wrong, Pete, I'm not setting you up. This is going back about, maybe 9-10 years ago. He goes, you're going to like the story. And I'm thinking, oh, great, he's pawning me off some weirdo to get even with me for something, or I'm just thinking that. So, and as it turns out, I thought I met this person who was a weirdo because I heard all this story about this person meeting a phantom, basically, a guy that showed up in their room when she was 16 years old. It was a grown man. She looks up, she's doing her homework, and she sees this grown man in a pinstripe suit that's very gray-looking, sitting on a desk, but he's not speaking or anything, screams at the top of her lungs, runs out because the door's closest to where her bed was, gets her father. They come back, and the guy's gone. The window is all locked up. There's no way he could have got in and out of there and all this stuff. So then she then tells me 30 years later she meets this guy. Exactly. He hasn't aged a bit in the whole 9 yards. And I'm thinking, well, this is just one hell of a sensational story. And then, I did some digging into her, finding out more about her. Very credible person, Brent. Not a person that's got any sort of crazy tendencies or insanity issues, so to speak. But not too long ago, a few years ago, I got the same story from somebody else that had just been transplanted in the Niagara region who had met somebody similar to that guy. They were from the prairies, and sure enough, the exact ad verbatim story, even to the description of what this guy looked like. And I just thought, wow, I could hear the Rod Serling, the Twilight Zone music going on in my head.
Yeah, that's goosebump time for sure.
Yeah, and the years were so long apart between these two meetings with these folks that I'm thinking, okay, at first I thought I'm being punked here from friends, thinking, okay, let's see if we can get Pete, let's pay him back, because I'm known as a really bad practical joker, and I love a great practical joke, and it's like chips. Once you start, you can't stop them. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting a lot of payback here, but no, it wasn't payback at all. And so I include that in there, and I got people who read the book said they really are fascinated by that story, as well as the other macabre stories in there, that they are the creepy ones that they were looking for. Was
there anything in the book that you came across you said, nah, this is just too creepy, I'm going to leave this out?
There is something with it that involves a tomb that's down our area that to make a long story short, back I was teaching a course in parapsychology back in the late 90s, and it was the first course I had ever taught. It was a test drive course. I wanted to see if people would sign up for it. The college said, yeah, run it. Let's see if we get interest in it. The class had basically sold out that there was a wait list of something like 20 people deep. That's how much people wanted this course. I taught this course, and I wound up eventually meeting she become one of my best friends in the world, and she passed away in around 2005. She was a real deal psychic by all accounts. She was sought after by many police organizations around the world in cases, and obviously she was helping them immensely because they were being solved. They would keep coming to her door. And she first took the course because she wanted to see what, if I was just one of these scientific people that put everything down because I was just too much of a snob in my own studies.
Hang on to that for a second, because we're coming up to break in 30 seconds for a 6-minute break. And it sounds like it's a good story, and I don't want you to truncate it or rush through it. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, folks, don't go anywhere. Get the coffee going, get the tea going, get a beverage of your choice going. A Guinness, why not? Or a good old Canadian beer. Our guest tonight, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco. Paranormal Niagara is the book, Cases of the Mysterious and Macabre. There is the music. We'll be back in 6 minutes, folks. www.nightfrightshow.com. Don't go anywhere. There's more to this great stuff, and I'm gonna be asking him, because he's a psychologist, about Robin Williams' death. Stick around, folks. We'll be back in 6 minutes. Stick around too, please, Peter.
Yep.
Boy, that sounds like more of a crowd than usual. It must be because our guest, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, is here. He is a television star, folks. He has his own TV show in Niagara. It's called Niagara's Most Haunted. He also has a book out called The Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Mysterious and the Macabre. He's a psychologist. He's a creator and instructor of the Criminal Psychology Department. Are you ready for this program? At Niagara College. Very cool. He's an instructor at McMaster University. What do you do at McMaster's, by the way, Peter?
I actually teach in the addiction studies program. I used to teach in the police studies program, which no longer exists there. But I've been there in the addiction studies program since 1998. Great program. Anybody looking for a diploma in addiction studies, great place to take it. You can do it all online, too.
That's fantastic. Folks, www.nightfrightshow.com. All the above links and a link to Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco's website will be there. www.nightfrightshow.com. Just let me do this, get this out of the way. Brent Holland has a new book out called The JFK Assassination, From the Oval Office to Dealey Plaza. Interviews with witnesses and specialists, including the last interview with Ted Sorensen, who was JFK's speechwriter, folks, JFK's friend and speechwriter. In his new book, The Kennedy Assassination, From the Oval Office to Dealey Plaza, radio show host, that's me, Brent Holland shares the last interview with Theodore Ted Sorensen, President John F. Kennedy's trusted advisor. You can tell how much I love doing this, don't you, folks? You're just there going, oh yeah, he's really into this. It's a great book, no kidding. If you don't know anything about the assassination, this is the book for you. I'm going off script here a little bit. I'll tell you why I wrote it. There's a disconnect between today's generation and yesterday's, like I've never seen before. A classic example, folks, is I did a show in 2012, not on 2012, although I did some shows on 2012 too. I did a show with Dr. Delgado from Science North in Sudbury on the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Some of the emails I got thanked me because they had no idea. These are from university students. No idea the Titanic was a real story, but the classic one I got, and I should have kept it. Somebody actually wrote me and asked me what happened to Jack. And Jack, of course, is the DiCaprio character in the movie The Titanic. So, the Kennedy assassination, yeah, it's 50 years ago, 51 this year, but it was a seminal moment in the world. And not too many people realize even who Jack Ruby was. And Jack Ruby, folks, for those of you who aren't sure right now, was the guy that ended up killing Lee Harvey Oswald just 3 days after Lee Harvey Oswald purportedly killed President Kennedy. So was there a conspiracy? Well, yes, there was. Without question, there was. I had a crime scene investigator on my show using 21st century crime scene techniques, forensic techniques that just were not available in 1963. And she found a frontal shot. She's a senior crime scene investigator. And why that's important is because the official report says that there was only one shooter and all the bullets emanated from above and behind the president. Well, now that we know there's a frontal shot, that means a minimum of 2 shooters. And by definition, that means conspiracy. Was it a coup d'etat? I do not believe so. Either did Ted. And I explain that further in this book. That's where Oliver Stone got it wrong. He thought the government was behind the assassination. They were not. They were behind the cover-up for a very serious reason. They were trying to avoid another nuclear standoff with the Soviet Union. And as we all know, A year before that, in 1962, Kennedy was killed in 63. We came that close to not being here with something called the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I explain that all in this book as well. We were so close to not being here. You know the Ukraine right now, folks? Keep an eye on that, because we could end up in the same mess we ended up in 1962. If Putin walks across the border with troops into Ukraine, NATO will have to respond. And the only way we can respond in Europe is with small nuclear weapons, and that's a fact. Keep an eye on the Ukraine. It's really, really a tinderbox, much more so than the Middle East. The Middle East is a mess, but they don't have planet extinction weapons, and the two superpowers do. We were so close. Jackie Kennedy, President Kennedy's wife, called JFK the night before Ted Sorensen wrote the letter to Khrushchev to get him to back down, and asked if she could bring the kids home to the White House so they could all be together the next morning so they could all die together. And that's Caroline Kennedy, of course, and John Jr. That's how close we were. So put that in today's terms. Tonight, Mrs. Obama is calling the president to bring the two girls back to the White House because there's going to be a nuclear strike tomorrow morning. All that stuff's in this book, folks. First-person witnesses, the first African-American Secret Service agent is in here, handpicked by JFK. He's got some incredible stories about protecting Carolyn, JFK, and Jacqueline. The doctor who worked on JFK is in this book, the actual surgeon who worked on him. JFK was still alive when he was first brought to New Parkland Hospital. He tells all the behind-the-scenes stories about Jackie coming in, the last rites. Jackie had pieces of JFK's brains clutched in her hands and handed them to doctors and said, "Will this help save him?" That's the insanity of the moment. JFK assassination from the Oval Office. Boy, is my publisher going to be pleased about that. From the Oval Office to DEALEY PLAZA, interviews with witnesses and specialists, including the last interview with Ted Sorensen, and that's the big one, folks. No other book has had access to the inner circle like I had, and I'm very, very grateful for that. www.nightfrightshow.com. Just before the break, we were telling a great story, and I had to interrupt our guest tonight, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, because we were going to break. Can we pick up on that now?
Oh, absolutely, Brent. I was
Thank you
telling
so
you a
much.
story about how I had a lady in my class that actually used, and she was a psychic. She was the real deal, by all accounts, from my experiences with her and from what I had heard from police that had used her before. And interestingly enough, she was really into these conspiracy theories sort of deal. And I remember her telling me about that one there and her thoughts on the Lady Di situation,
Sure.
that tragedy. But to make a long story short, I was a skeptic. I never believed in this stuff, really. I thought, okay, it's great in books. It always happens to others. Maybe it's out there. And I remember for the longest time, the course had ended, her and I stayed in touch. I became really good friends with her and her husband. And she had me over to her house a few times to talk about my stuff involvement with police teaching and that stuff, because she was doing some of it from her perspective. And so she kept pushing and asking me to have one of these readings. Let me read you, Pete. And I said, oh, yeah, whatever. So finally one day she just says, who's David? And she goes, he needs to talk to you. I said, really? She described this fellow, David, who had eyes like Anthony Hopkins and very fair complexion, blondish, gray hair, very good-looking man. And I said, oh, yeah, I know who he is. I said, that's actually one of my best friends. And he had moved away. He became a chaplain, of all things, at the Mayo Clinic in Minneapolis. And I had spoken to this person for over a year and a half. We just kind of lost touch. And I remember her saying, he needs to talk to you. He needs to talk to you. He needs to talk to you, and you're going to see him in 2 weeks plus or minus 2 days, and he's going to come to you. And I thought, okay, that's a great hokey story, great. I just finished having chicken wings and a bottle of beer at her house with her and her hubby, and I left. Never thought much about it at all, Brent, and all I remember is 14 days later my doorbell rings. I go to answer the door. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and there's my best friend David standing at the door, and the first words out of his mouth is, and he's from Ireland too. He was from Ireland before. He's the guy who founded Bob Geldof and the Boomtown Rats, that band back in the day, and Thin Lizzy.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and he was friends with the Edge from U2. He had known him, and he grew up with Gabriel Byrne, the Hollywood actor.
Sure, sure.
And David actually had become a Catholic priest and wound up leaving it in a roundabout way to become a chaplain at the Mayo Clinic. Very first words out of his mouth at his Irish accent is, hey, Pete, he goes, I need to talk to you. Ad verbatim exactly what she said, and I almost fainted. And I remember after we chatted for a bit, he left. Very first thing is I was on the bullhorn to her. I get on the phone, and I said, how did you do this? How did you know? And then she goes, are you ready to talk, my friend, and let me do one of these sort of reading things. And you know what, Brent? She literally undressed me, pulling my pants down, telling me stuff by names and events that nobody could have possibly knew or understood, and she nailed it. And I used to ask her, how? How is this conceivably humanly possible? And she goes, Peter, I don't know. She goes, I just had this gift as a kid. My she was adopted. She goes, my adopted parents used to think I was some weirdo, some weird person that, TV shows would be on like 60 Minutes or ABC News. Somebody would go missing, and she'd go, I'd say, hey, they're going to find that person so-and-so at this place at this time, and they would find her. And then she was viewed as like this demon person, a witch, you named it. And I remember she had told me so much. But I remember her once telling me, because this goes back to what you asked me about a thing that wasn't in the book. She told me about this tomb that's in the region near me. She had once got locked in there as a teenager, and it was a tomb that had lots of legends and cursed, because there had been deaths with people who messed around there. One person, I believe, lost a leg or an arm not too long after they'd been around there. And I remember her telling me, Brent, she goes, Peter, everything you've heard about that thing, stay the hell away from it, because it is hell.
Oh, God.
Based on that, I've never written about it, and I've never filmed there. We've written and filmed over 65 different places, and that is not on my list. I don't know if it's because I really believe in it so much, but something has stuck in my craw. It's like, you know what, if she told me stay the heck away from it, I'm going to, because she nailed some other stuff, and I'll just leave it be.
Okay, yeah, I think that's good advice.
And you know what, and I just thought, I ain't going there. I just don't want to, I don't want to, even if it's not, I'm just going to let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah, I think that, I would do the same thing. Again, I think I'd be moving, though. I think as far away as possible. It's funny you mentioned the tomb thing, because I had mentioned Christine Corda, the woman that Ed Warren recommended go through a Roman Catholic exorcism in the first part of the show. When she was a little girl, she was 3 years old, her parents, in some kind of sick ritual, talk about child abuse, locked her in a tomb attached to the cadaver in there as some kind of satanic ritual for rebirth, if you will. And she is very, very clairvoyant as well. So there must have been something in the trauma there that released this type of energy for them, or something. I don't know. But there's a commonality there, right there. Two people that were just put into hell, if you will. Incredible stuff. Robin Williams. Can we talk a few minutes about poor Robin? This is a fellow, folks, that has suffered from depression all his life. The comedic actor, he's just passed away. We're broadcasting this show on August 12th, 2014. So if you're listening to this in 5 years, Robin Williams has just passed away last night. And could we talk a little bit about depression, the desperation people feel sometimes? And
absolutely, Brent. In fact, I spent about a half hour talking on a radio show in the States this afternoon about it, because it has affected so many people's lives. And I'll be the first person to say I was devastated. I am beyond. It's like you've lost somebody in your own family. Because this guy came into our lives. For me, he's my generation. As a kid, I saw him as Mork first on Happy Days, which I love the show, and I've watched and followed everything he's done professionally. The man, I believe, had a way with him that he really got it. He knew how to really not only entertain people, but lift people up. And unfortunately, I just think, he made so many people laugh that he didn't know how to make himself laugh. And I say this because I used to run support groups for depression. I've written a lot of articles on depression. In my other life when I was in private practice, and I still teach on this stuff, especially in addiction studies. I've dealt with celebrities, big-name celebrities in the past that have had addictions, that have had depression and anxiety, and people every day, run-of-the-mill people like myself, that have had these issues. And I've always preached this, Brent. Addictions and mental health issues do not discriminate. They will find anybody and everybody if the chance is allowed. And unfortunately, something like depression is a silent illness that kills so many people. It eats away at them. It's insidious. It's slow. And the problem is that no matter where they go, they take it with them. They take you with you wherever you go. So you can leave here, go to a tropical island, and that depression is still with you. And it's the worst parts, Brent, are when those lights, the sun goes down and it gets dark and you're alone all night, or even in bed with somebody, but you still feel alone because it's you and your own thoughts. That's when it attacks you the most.
It's not when you're busy and detracted. Are there trigger factors behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading some blurbs on it today, hearing some people's reports on him, some of the stuff that was going on in his life, the fact that he seemed less happy, the fact that he just looked sad. I remember reading one report where he just looked older in the last year, which, you know what, there was a lot going on in his life from what his show, The Crazies, got canceled, and I'm sure that didn't go over well for him because, he's a master at what he does. He's very successful.
Top notch, yeah.
And I'm wondering, nobody's ever going to know the true story. Maybe somebody closest to him, but as a general public, and I would never be one to speculate, even speculate with somebody with depression, because the gambit of thoughts that they have are so irrational that only makes sense to them in their own way, and even then, it doesn't make sense to them, because that's why eventually a lot of them bottom out. And I can tell you right now, a lot of people with depression are alcoholics. Alcoholism is at the root of, alcoholism leads to depression, or a lot of people with depression become alcoholics. And I can't emphasize this enough. It's, if you are a person out there that has depression, please speak up, please talk to somebody, seek a professional. In fact, go to my website, rightnowenoughisenough.com, rightnowenoughisenough.com. I wrote a book by that title, and it's all on addictions, addictive personalities, and also moods. And it's a silent disease, Brent, that kills so many people.
How would somebody know that they're not just feeling the blues, disappointment, or regular disappointment? How would one know that they've slipped into a depression?
It stays with you. I think we all, at any given time, 20% of the population, and that's actually a modest estimate, suffers from depression or is depressed.
Wow.
Or has anxiety. And it's like 1 in 5 people are. You don't have full-blown. There's different types of depression. There's obviously dysthymia, which is chronic depression, where a person is always down, and you know it. You know that person is depressed because they don't eat. All they want to do is sleep. They've had suicidal tendencies. They might be a cutter, a self-mutilator. There's cyclothymia, where that comes and goes, where they have these really down, bottom-out periods, but then they're not as down, but then they're back down again. And that's an ongoing progression. You see it. And any time, these things here may last up to 9 months before it breaks. That's without medication. Then obviously bipolar is a more readable type of depression, where you're up, you have your manic episodes, and then you're bottom out down. And then you actually have your situational depressions, which are the types of depressions due to a breakup in your life, a job loss, let's say, death to somebody close to you, a sudden change in your life that's traumatic. And then there's a seasonal affective disorder, which is just change due to lack of sunlight and all that stuff. So the bottom line is you need to identify which type of depression it is. And the ones that progressively stay the longest or always remain, those are the signs that you need help. You definitely need probably a good assessment done at a mood disorders clinic by a psychiatrist that is trained in mood disorders, and definitely talking to a psychologist or a counselor is going to help.
What I was going to ask you is the first step forward. Would that be going to see their GP, their doctor? or even just walking into an emergency room if they've got suicidal thoughts?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. A person that is suicidal, definitely, or if you have a loved one that
And
has,
they won't be chastised. They'll be understood.
yeah, and sometimes it's if you know of somebody that's not getting help at home or that, sometimes if it's a friend or a colleague you work with or whatever, sit down and talk to them. Maybe that's all they just need to do. They need to talk to somebody outside of their niche, which is their family, which could be in denial of it. Or they'll say, hey, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Yeah, it could get better, and it probably will get better for most people. But the problem is living with yourself in that period of time that it takes to and will get better, because that's not a fun period. That's not a fun place. And sometimes just getting a referral. I'm a firm advocate. I used to be involved with them, Canadian Mental Health Association. They're one of the best organizations in Canada, and they do these small assessments. Go in and see one of them. Or, as you say, go into emergency and get a psychiatric assessment and go from there. Generally, a GP is not trained in psychology. You want to go and speak to somebody that has background in psychology and can readily identify the signs and the symptoms and also the progression of why or how it occurred.
Is there any link between creative folks and depression? The makeup of their brains?
I would like to say that Tom Cochrane wrote a song called The Lunatic Fringe.
That's right. Sure, that's a great song. Canadian songwriter, folks. Fantastic. Red Rider.
Yep. Yeah. And it's kind of like that, almost like, okay, or the razor's edge. You're on this edge, you're on this blade, or on the fringe. Are you such a great actor, i.e., are you a great actor, like Heath Ledger, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, a John Belushi, River Phoenix? We see all of these ones that are just went way too young. And in my books, it's just hard to accept the fact that, I know he's human, and I know he was just an actor and a comedian, but for whatever reason, he was an icon, Robin Williams. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is way too young. And it is too young. 63 is young today.
Absolutely.
And you think, okay, was his genius caused by his bipolar shifts? Was it caused by his mood disorder that actually made him more bold, shame-free, that he could just express himself in bizarre ways that would make him just over the top, funny? And you know what? Who knows? I can't say it one way or another, because there are some people that I'll go the other way that are not depressed at all, Brent, that work at, say, General Motors or Ford their entire life. Then they're on an assembly line. They retire, and then 6 months later they drop dead, or they go into a depression because this was their life. Their livelihood's taken away from them. So, it can go either way. Is it the work that, the career that makes the artist, that sort of stuff? Is it the disorder that makes the artist? Because, if you read the biography on Jim Morrison looked like a walking time bomb.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So that's what you have, that's what you have to wonder. Does the disorder, if they have the disorder, give them the ingenuity to be this genius, to be this great performer, this great artist? Or has being this great artist led to this fact that, hey, when I'm not getting this attention, or I don't feel like I'm living up to what I once was, does this cause the fallout? I don't know.
Thank you for that, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco. He is our guest tonight, folks. Great show tonight. Lots of time left. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Night Fright. I'm your host, Brent Holland. We are going to go and turn the energy around. We were just talking about Robin Williams, of course, and hopefully if anybody is suffering out there from depression or what they may even conceive as depression, there's help out there. It is not got the same stigma that it had 5, 10, 15, even 30 years ago. There's no worries, folks. Just go in and tell them you're feeling bummed out, and somebody will talk to you. And there is lots of treatments out there for you, either as simple as taking a single pill a day or as simple as some behavioral therapy as well. The idea is the thoughts you're feeling, the feelings are real. The thoughts sometimes can be a little bit warped because of the way you're feeling. Folks, here's a good example. When you're hungry and you're kind of crabby, but then you eat and you feel better, there you go. Hopefully that's a good analogy. Let's go back now to Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, www.nightfrightshow.com. His book is called Paranormal Niagara. He is a psychologist. That's why we talked about Robin Williams and depression. He's also got a show called Niagara's Most Haunted. Now, I'm going to ask you, Peter, why is Niagara Falls and the area around there the most haunted part of Canada?
Well, I would say, and this is the, how should I say, the anecdotal information I get and the opinions I get from those that are historians in the region here that I've had the chance, or that have involved with the Friends of Fort George, which is people that lead the ghost tours. And they'll say, you know what it is? It's because some of the most bloodiest battles were fought here.
Yeah.
In all of history,
Yeah.
In North American history, which there was a lot of deaths, a lot of violent deaths. And with that said, if there are going to be ghosts, those that do research and theories into this, like I'm talking about I'm talking those that are paranormal investigators, or that really do a lot of research and believe in this, and I am not one of those folks. For anybody who's thinking about emailing me and going, well, do you believe this, do you believe that, or what's your theory on this? I just think, I read the theories, I read the beliefs of these people that we work with, that we interview in our shows, and I have in the books, and they say it's where you've had these traumatic sorts of deaths,
very
sudden ones,
yeah,
violent ones, that perhaps the spirit lingers or there's an apparition left behind. And you know what, I think that's what it really is all about here, Brent, that perhaps that is why we're seeing all these ghosts here. And it's funny because I was speaking to somebody that's down in the area of West Virginia, all around the Arlington area and all that stuff, and where a lot of the bloody battles were fought down there during the Confederate War and other wars.
Yeah.
Down there, and they say, oh yeah, these places are really haunted down there. We see, and it's interesting, once again, disembodied spirits of soldiers oftentimes, so it's kind of cool that they're the same kinds of reports that we get up this way for those that see these things.
I often wonder, if they're putting a new building up at Ground Zero 9/11, where the Twin Towers stood. I often wonder what that is going to show in the next few years, if there will be a lot of unexplained phenomena, let's put it that way, happening in the building, just because it was so sudden, so not unexpected, and usually for some reason this is where this type of activity hangs around. Just out of curiosity, what is the fort made out of there? Because we have Fort Henry here in Kingston, and this whole city is made out of limestone, all the old buildings. And I swear to God, I walk down the street, and they know me from the show, just as I'm sure they know you in Niagara Falls from the show, and everybody stops me with a ghost story. And I'm wondering if it's got something to do with the limestone holding energy. It could be just as simple as that. I don't know.
Actually, our forts here are made out of logs. So
there goes that theory, folks. Right out the window.
Yeah. But mind you, though, there is a tunnel in there. I'm just thinking of both of them, Fort Erie and Fort George, which we have here. Most of them are wood. However, with that said, we have Fort Mississauga, which is in Niagara-on-the-Lake as well, too, which actually sits in the middle of a golf course. And that one there is all made out of bricks. And it really is interesting, but who knows? That a lot of the other places that we've looked at, too, these haunted houses and that, a lot of them, Brent, are bricks. They're solid. They're just, it is stone. It's stone and brick. So perhaps there is something to what you're asserting.
I don't know. It's just speculation, and that's what the show's for, folks. Do your own research and stuff. It's funny, How do you feel about EVPs when you hear them, electronic voice phenomena? What people claim are the sounds of ghosts.
I have never experienced one of those in person, like meaning being there,
right,
and hearing it myself. I'm literally going to have to take the words of, you're assuming that these people that are doing these shows, you see these ghost hunter shows and that stuff, that they have integrity and they're being honest with their findings, and the voices that you're hearing are real, or they're not, as we would put in the visual phenomenon of seeing, the face of Christ in a tortilla shell because we really want to see it, or in the clouds, you know what I mean?
Burnt toast,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so is this voice really a real voice, or is it something that we're forced to want to believe it's a voice, or if we're told it enough times, it's the power of suggestion, like, oh yeah, I can hear it. It's going, hello, will you be my friend? And, so I don't know, because, you'll hear people, their dogs are making a sound or that, and then people go, you hear it? My dog can speak. My dog is really talking right now. No, it just sounds like it because of the tone of it.
Yeah.
But, you have people convinced that, oh, my gosh, you should see so-and-so's black lab. It can speak, man. It's got, like, Wikipedia going on there when it howls, it's speaking.
That's good. That's funny. Well, I'll tell you why. I was down in Dallas for the 50th. I was the only Canadian invited because of my friendship with Ted Sorensen to go to the 50th anniversary for JFK in Dallas. And when I was there, I was staying at a place called the Adolphus Hotel, which is like a zillion years old, folks. I think it was before the dawn of time this thing was made. Anyways, there was a ghost story on the 18th floor, of course. And one of the people that was there recognized me from the show, believe it or not, and said, would you go up to the 18th floor with me? So I went up, and I took my camera with me, and I've never had anything weird or anything happen in my life. And I asked the question on camera, if there's anybody here, please say hello. Well, I got back to Canada. I came back to Kingston, and I was going through the tape just randomly. And when I got to that part in the tape, I heard hello back, and it scared the heck out of me. And I turned the tape on. I've never looked at it since. So I don't know what it was. Maybe I wasn't expecting to hear anything. I didn't see anything. And yet there it is, and I've played it for several other people, and they claim they hear hello too. So I just thought I'd get your opinion on that. I won't be doing that again, folks. I am not a ghost hunter. I am a sissy. I run from these things full speed. Trust me on that. Okay, let's bring it full circle. When we started the show, we were talking about a poltergeist possession. Took place in 1970 in a small town. It's a city. What am I saying? St. Catharines, Ontario, which is a stone's throw from Niagara Falls. And it took place on the February 6, 1970. There was an 11-year-old boy by the name of Peter. And Johnny Carson got wind of it, and he even mentioned it on The Tonight Show at the time, which is a pretty big deal. The Tonight Show was the late-time show to watch, kind of like Letterman and all the rest of them that are on right now put together. Nobody else watched anything at late night. So it was a very, very big deal. Now my question to Peter, I'm going to bring it full circle, did they ever get rid of the burr? Did it just kind of go away by itself as he grew out of puberty?
Here's where it got really interesting, Brent. To really conclude the story, when I was talking to Bob Crawford, because Bob was the guy that saw it all the way through, the cop from day one to the end.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, so how did it turn out? What actually happened? And then he says, well, it was kind of interesting in the sense that it stopped. At 28 days, it stopped. He said the last thing that had happened, and this is interesting, is a priest had visited the house.
Oh.
And then he said it stopped. So I said, was there an exorcism, do you know of? Was there, did they think it was a possession, any of this stuff? And then Bob said, we don't know. Nothing was said thereafter. So it was like one of these things that it just stopped, but nobody said why it stopped. And that's where it was left with us. We never really got an answer one way as the conclusion of why this thing stopped after 28 days. I guess the priests were, obviously the church is pretty hush-hush on this stuff. They never said anything about it. And as far as, I guess, from what Bobby said to us, and Bob, Bob's going to be about 80 years old, in his 80s. Bob was said, hey, basically, cops wanted this thing to go away because it was nothing more than a nuisance. It was becoming a freak show there. And you had people coming from different parts of the states in Canada masquerading as nuns and priests trying to get in there, and they were really reporters trying to get in there and get a glimpse of this. So at the end of the day, what Bob says, it just went away on its own, kind of, so to speak. Or did it? Did it have something to do with the priest that visited? And that's all he would say. That's all he knew.
You know, after what you told me before about a poltergeist is the energy created by a person, I'm wondering if the fact that the priest showed up, if that perhaps placated the young kid and he stopped creating that energy. I don't know. It's just speculation once again. What's there now? Any idea? I think there's a pizza place there now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there is actually. And it was funny when we were doing reenactments. In fact, we're in the, as I said, the Toronto Film Festival this summer, and a couple of film festivals here in Canada and in the States. And it was like, okay, so we did our filming for that episode, which is now in the film on the street. We did not want to go and knock on the owners of the door of this place. And, you know, next thing you know, people are showing up at whatever pizza place it is going, hey, you know, is this where the ghost is? I want to see the ghost or whatever it is. You know, hey, is my pizza possessed? And that's the last thing we wanted is some possessed pepperoni pizza and some really bizarre stuff. So we just kind of left it at that.
Left it at that and walked away. I think that was wise. Again, very prudent on your behalf. Personal experiences. What kind of personal experiences have you had that can't be explained? Something out of the ordinary? You know, and I always say this, folks, you know, a paranormal experience, something out of the ordinary can be, and everybody's had this, where they're thinking of someone and all of a sudden the phone goes and there it is. You had mentioned David before. Was there anything else that you can think of that kind of creeped you out?
I could say, because I always get asked this, have you ever seen a ghost since you've been doing the show, now that we're in our third season? And
or a UFO or something just unexplainable.
Yeah, I've never seen a UFO. But I would say since we've done this show, there's three things that are really fascinating. Number one is that we filmed it's called the Screaming Tunnel on Warner Road in Niagara Falls. It's one of the most haunted tunnels in not only Canada, but North America and the world for that matter, because how many haunted tunnels are there? This was the tunnel that was used in the Stephen King movie The Dead Zone back in the 80s, starring Christopher Walken and Martin Sheen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great place. I have shot productions there. Also, the last one I did there was with the Space Channel, Space TV there a couple years ago. In total, I have done 5 different productions in that tunnel for another TV production company, as well as a fellow that is an award winner with his own show that looks at militia, and we did a shoot in there. 5.
Still with me, Peter? Oh, don't tell me. You see that? We're just getting, you know, he's going to tell a nice, good, great ghost story, and I think we just lost him via Skype.
Oh, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I don't. You know, that's talk about the ghosts and the machinery. Little pun there. Yeah, Skype's kind of funky.
Yeah, and so with them, we lost power 5 different times there. No explanation.
Huh.
So with that said, 2 of the most interesting ones that I've seen in the last 2 years involved the current shooting of our show. We have a psychic investigator that comes out with us now. He's a really cool dude. He's got his own TV show. He's known well across Canada and the States. His name's Stan Mello. Mm-hmm. Stan was a fellow transplanted here from New York City. Still has the accent. Sounds and looks like Al Pacino, a really cool guy. He had a massive heart attack, I believe, when he was in his 40s. Literally, this is a story. He died, and they brought him back to life. They revived him. And ever since he came back, he has this ability to see stuff, which is kind of cool. So we made acquaintances about 2 years ago, and I've brought him out on some of our shoots. We now made him a staple part of our shows because viewers like to hear his take on stuff, and he's a really honest, sincere guy. Well, we were doing a shoot at Drummond Hill Cemetery, which is one of the most historic cemeteries in all of Canada. And while he was with his gizmo and his equipment, he's got different devices to read stuff, he was having a conversation with, he said, a spirit that was there one night. And I was looking, going, really? And I believe, and I feel bad. I rolled my eyes a couple of times, thinking, because I ain't seeing anything, and all I'm doing is getting eaten by mosquitoes. Well, later that night, they sent me some photos. One of his partners there was doing infrared photography, and he snapped some stuff off. Right where he had been speaking, right where Stan's head was this giant orb that was literally face-to-face with him. I thought that was kind of cool. That made me a greater quasi-believer. But the kicker was 2 summers ago we were filming at 9:15 one night. We were facing a building. They were taking pictures. The sun was behind the building. So there was absolutely no reflection in the giant picture windows of this 200-year-old pub that is now a derelict building. What they captured on film in one of the windows, I've seen it. We've done many Comic-Cons now, and we bring our books to show some of the shoots, the still photos. We have a face, and it looks like a phantom. Actually, it looks like Jigsaw from the movie Saw, and everybody has seen this face. It is the most disturbing face I've ever seen, and it is not swirls made in the window by reflections of sun or clouds. It is just really creepy. And in fact, we're going to be at the Comic-Con this last month of August here, Labor Day weekend in Toronto at the Big Fan Expo, and we'll have those pictures there.
Oh, that's great. A friend of mine is going there, Anthony DP Mann. He, well, we shot a film here last year called Phantom of the Opera. It's a remake of the old horror.
Yes, I know him. We were just at the Oshawa Film Festival.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so you know him. Okay, so what'd you do? Yeah. Did you lose a bet or something by meeting him? No, I'm kidding. He's a great buddy. He's my best friend here in Kingston. And talk about synchronicity. I grew up in a place in Montreal called Verdun. He grew up in a place in Montreal called LaSalle. And we didn't know each other, of course, so LaSalle was right next to Verdun. And took coming to Kingston to meet him, so I just scored his film, actually. So there you go. So it's funny. So say hi to him. I'm not going to be able to get there. I was hoping to get there, but I won't be able to. But say hi to him for sure. And we did a Comic-Con together, actually, a few months ago in Oshawa. And that was a lot of fun, too.
That was the one, the Schwa Horror Film Festival.
That's right, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
actually, our film, Niagara's Most Haunted, premiered during that.
Oh, geez, where the heck was I? Because I was showing some videos, too. It's too bad. If I had known you were there personally, I would have met you. So that's great. You're going to be at Fan Expo, folks. That's in Toronto, by the way, at the end of the month. And are you going over to the Montreal one as well in September?
No, we won't be going to that one. In fact, me and some crew members, as I said, we're going to be at the one in Toronto, and then we have the Toronto Toronto Independent Film Festival, which we'll at International Independent Film Festivals we're going to be at.
Congratulations. That's terrific.
Thank you.
So how is the show going? I guess it's going gangbusters, is it?
Yeah, we're doing really well. As I said, we've got people following us from around the world, which I would have never believed in a million years. We're just like this little ma-pa operation here in Niagara, and next thing you know, people are really, really interested in this, which is really great. And I'm really happy because it means that these places are getting recognized. Our show's getting recognized, which I'm really happy and pleased about. And in fact, if you go to the actual website, niagarasmosthaunted.com, in a couple of weeks, to coincide with the Comic-Con in Toronto, you can sign up for a newsletter. In fact, on our site, you'll get information on places we're filming, behind-the-scenes shots of some of the production, some of the photos we get, as I discussed, about like phantom faces, if we get those, or orbs, and also a chance for people to post their own haunted ghost stories or their own experiences on there. And we're going to have something you can actually win a prize for your best ghost story.
That's fantastic. Way to go. Nice job.
Thank you.
Folks, Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, Paranormal Niagara is the name of the book, Cases of the Mysterious and the Macabre. That's a little background music for that one. Niagara's Most Haunted is the TV show. Don't forget this website as well, www.enoughisenough.com. If you're concerned at all about somebody, or if you're concerned about yourself, about depression, this is a good website for you to check out. And do go and see a professional. There's no shame in this, folks, whatsoever. Like I said, it's not the Middle Ages anymore. This is as common as if you're going in with a broken toe. It's that common. There's no shame whatsoever. So I will be putting that on the website as well, that link. That's a very important one. Do you get a lot of UFO stories from that area as well? I'll tell you why. I had mentioned starting the show in Sudbury. And that place is a hotbed for UFO activity. Not so much for ghosts and things, but UFOs, it seems almost on a nightly basis we were getting reports of UFO sightings.
I can't say. Really, we do. There's been some stories circulating. We did a fun little expose on it last season, in Season 2 of Niagara's Most Haunted, where we were shooting down at the Tall Ship Festival in Port Colborne, which is a huge event each year.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about it, Brent, is we went down to Lake Erie along the shores where people have reported seeing, quote-unquote, UFOs or lights in the sky. So I kind of dug into it, and I'm going to put a plug in for Dr. Brian Piak. He's a good friend of mine. Brian is my chiropractor, but Brian is also the head of the Niagara Astronomy Society, and Brian is a genius when it comes to many things in life, including astronomy, and he also runs the Geology Society. So Brian is always looking in the sky, sometimes with telescopes that cost way more than $30,000. So
Wow.
He's been doing this for 30, 40 years probably, I'm going to guess. And I've asked him, are there things up there, do you believe? And have you ever seen anything? So I figure if anybody's seen anything down this way or up in the sky, that guy should have for sure. He says, Peter, for as long as I've done it, absolutely not. I haven't seen anything.
Really?
Yeah, and I asked him, I said, point blank, what do you think people would be seeing over Lake Erie, down the shores of Port Colborne, out that area there? And he says, he goes, probably what you're seeing is these remote-controlled little vehicles that people can fly around. And he goes, I wouldn't put it past anybody that these could actually be part of Border Patrol, that they've got these little things flying around with cameras on them because of people trying to smuggle either booze or drugs across on boats, these little boats, or whatever, in the middle of the night or whatever, to avoid detection. And that's what he believed it was. So I thought,
pretty good.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? It really, really does. What's next for you, Guy? I know you've got all these great things coming up. What is the film about, by the way?
Oh, the film is about, ironically, it's divided into 3 parts, where we have the poltergeist story, the actual events that happened in 1970, and we then take off to an actual real haunted house in Niagara Falls here that the owners then found that the house at one point 200 years ago was actually used as a hospital for soldiers during the War of 1812.
Wow.
And in the same, the third part of the film is we go and explore the Showboat Theater, which is out in Port Colborne, where Vance Badaway, who's the mayor of Port Colborne, appears on it to tell his ghost stories where he's experienced it within the theater. It's fun, it's educational, and we've got a couple sneaky storylines going on in there, and that's what we're about. And in fact, as I'm speaking with you right now, my team is in Welland at the Rose City Bed and Breakfast, which is Colonel Rose built this house, nearly 150 years ago, I believe it was. And Welland is known as the Rose City. It's named after him, and he's the guy that really developed roses in Welland. And at one point, we have a picture of him that got invited to the White House. He's there on the front with President Hoover, and he had brought him, I believe, 1,000 or something roses like that, we were told tonight.
Wow.
So my team is there right now doing reenactments. I've got a whole group of them. There's about 8 of them filming in there right now, reenacting some of the stories within the house. And I'm probably heading over there because they're going to be doing an 11:30, 12 o'clock wrap-up tonight. So I'm going to see what kind of damage they did to the bed and breakfast. And hopefully I'm not going to get shot when I get there.
Yeah, I don't think you will. Folks, we've been speaking with Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco tonight. We've covered a lot of stuff tonight. We talked about Robin Williams earlier, as well as that terrific little story there, little Canadiana history from 1970 about a poltergeist possession in St. Catharines. His book is called Paranormal Niagara, Cases of the Mysterious and the Macabre. Niagara's Most Haunted is his TV show, and he's got a wealth of stuff as well at his website, which the link for all of the above will be on the www.nightfrightshow.com website. And the main link I want to give out tonight right on the air is www.enoughisenough.com, and that one's for anybody who thinks they may be suffering from depression, or anybody who thinks they may know somebody that's suffering from depression, especially with the tragic death yesterday of Robin Williams, one of my fave guys of all time, so that's for sure. After this little tour is done for you, Peter, what is next? Are you planning another series of movies, or how do you see the show going?
I'm glad you asked. Actually, what we're doing tonight is the first episode of season 3 of Niagara's Most Haunted, which my crew is doing tonight, and that's actually going to be part of what we're putting in the film festival next year. We're going to put in a second. I want to say better, but that's not the term, because I think what Erica Benedicti has created with the first one is great. She's done a great job with it. But we're going to do it. We're going to kick it up a notch and make it a little more spookier, scarier. And we got some really cool stories. So we're going to be filming there, the McFarland House in Niagara-on-the-Lake, next week, as well as Birdie Hall, which was the mansion out in near Fort Erie, where a lot of famous governor generals, prime ministers used to spend back in the day. That is a really old haunted mansion that is really creepy as heck. And these are all going to be part of season 3 coming out this fall, but also used in a really unique way in our film, which we're putting out next year.
Is there a list on your website of places you're going to be, and can people approach you?
Oh, absolutely. What we're going to be doing is you can find me. I'd say you could find me on Facebook, but the problem is you can't have me. I think I got like 5,000 people. I didn't know that. I'm not really good technologically.
Me either.
Yeah. So I believe my gang there, they tweet stuff. So you can find me. I'm on Twitter. You can sign up on Twitter and find out where we're going to be. And we are on the road sometimes, coming to different places. So if you're close by, we may actually come to a place not too far from you. And as I said, check out our website now, niagarasmosthaunted.com. Right. And also come back in a couple of weeks. You can sign up for our newsletter and tell us your stories, and you can also find out where we're going to be. And
don't forget, folks, if you go to Fan Expo at the end of the month, August 2014, do go and see their film. And also check out Anthony D.P. Mann's film called Phantom of the Opera. You're going to love the music. I'm just kidding. It's a great film, and he's put a lot of hard work to it, and he's a great filmmaker. He really is. It was really challenging trying to get it done here in Kingston. We don't seem to have the same support in Kingston that you're benefiting from for local folks. So that's quite impressive. That says a lot about Niagara Falls in a heartbeat. Kingston's a little bit more not as I won't say generous, because that's not the word. They just don't accommodate so well. Folks, we've been speaking with Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brent. And everybody listening, thanks for listening to me. And as Brent said, check us out. We're at the Fan Expo in Toronto Labor Day weekend. We're in the Rue Morgue section, the Rue Morgue room, which is all horror. Yep. And come, we have a contest. We have 5 haunted famous houses, miniaturized. You can guess them, you can win a prize. There you go. What's better than that, folks? What a great way to spend a weekend, Fan Expo in Toronto, Canada. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright. This whole music thing is automated, right, folks? I say this at the end of the show every week, and I have no control over when the extra music starts to play. It just kind of happens magically every week. So sometimes I talk too much. I go over the music, which is probably going to happen tonight. There it is. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright, www.nightfrightshow.com. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time, and thank you, Peter. Good night, my friend.